It's a great name, this thing, Maxforce. The reality is it's the slightly more mundanely named Task Force on Tax Planning Practices. Now, Maxforce gives it a bit more clout, makes it sound like it's, there to exercise maximum power. Unfortunately, in that case, the reality is the fact that the head of it was a guy called Max Lienemeyer. He was the guy given the task by the European Commissioner on Competition, Margrethe Vestager, and her predecessor beforehand, to investigate companies for their tax practices in Europe.
And the investigation, it went around the world, as you say, the EU, Ireland, America involved. What was the sheer scope of it?
Well, the way it kind of kicked off and really gained pace was when the US Senate subcommittee started looking at where US companies are paying tax. Now, their approach was very much that, well, these companies should be paying tax in the US and not elsewhere. But that really drew to the attention of the European authorities, oh, so Apple isn't paying tax in the US, it doesn't seem, and as far as we can tell, it doesn't seem like they're paying a lot of tax in Europe. So that's what kicked off the investigation. From there, they went to Ireland and looked deeply into the way that Apple had holding companies registered in Ireland, and the argument that Apple makes is that, well, they have money in Ireland which isn't taxed there, but the moment that that money is repatriated to the US, it will be taxed. So, Apple's defense is that this is not untaxed income because it will be liable for tax at some stage. There were, of course, then, Irish politicians going to Cupertino. Meanwhile, people in Brussels are heads down digging into documents, trying very hard to understand this complex issue, which the commissioner herself admitted they didn't have great knowledge of going into it. That they really learn on the job, and there were questions asked perhaps to what extent they really were able to learn. So it was a very broad, encompassing investigation, but Apple says that perhaps they picked on small things which weren't really relevant.
So, of course, this is still yet to play out to a certain extent. When will we actually hear, as and when, who actually wins out? This, of course, being fought by the likes of Ireland, by Apple. And indeed, what surprised you the most in your own digging to get to the juicy details of this article?
Well, so what's going to happen in the next few weeks, possibly before the end of the year even, but in the next couple of weeks at least, is that the full decision will be published. And then within a few weeks after that, Apple will file an appeal, we think, but Apple will still have to pay the backlog of money. Now, that money will be placed in escrow, and there'll be court cases likely to extend over years before that money actually goes to the Irish coffers. If it does at all, it may be that it's reduced or scrapped entirely. The thing that was kind of surprising I found in this whole affair was just the size of the team in Brussels looking into it. Often the expectation is with the European Commission and with the European Union that they have vast numbers of bureaucrats digging into these things, and actually the team was just 4 people to begin with. It gradually was built out to 15 people, but I think in my mind I thought there might be hundreds of experts with vast amounts of experience digging into tax affairs. There were some people with a little bit of expertise in tax affairs, but they were really starting from the ground up, and that was quite surprising to me.